Commander Zexhai stared at his screen, his three eyes blinking in confusion. Something was wrong with the sensors. Very wrong. For over 300 years, the Caltharian Empire had ruled this part of space. Their technology was the best in the galaxy. Their sensors could see everything: what ships were made of, how many crew members they had, what weapons they carried. Nothing could hide from Caltharian eyes. But this thing approaching their border station was different. Impossible. The screen showed a ship coming toward them. A big ship, maybe as large as their biggest warships. But when Zexhai tried to scan it deeper, the computer gave him nothing. No metal readings. No energy signals. No crew life signs. The ship was there, but it was like it didn't exist at the same time. "Sir," called out Technician Velros from across the command center. "I'm getting the same readings. Or no readings. Whatever this is, it's not in our database." Zexhai felt a chill run down his spine. In his 20 years of service, he had never seen anything like this. The Caltharian Empire had records of every species in known space. They had conquered most of them. The few that remained free were too weak to matter. This ship was broadcasting no messages. It wasn't responding to their calls. It just kept coming, steady and silent like it owned the space it moved through. Admiral Korthoval walked into the command center, his heavy boots clicking on the metal floor. He was old even for a Caltharian, and had seen the Empire grow from a small kingdom to the ruler of dozens of worlds. His scarred face showed the battles he had fought to build that empire. "Report," he said, his voice deep and commanding. "Unknown vessel approaching, sir," Zexhai replied. "Distance 12 light minutes and closing. We cannot scan it properly. All deep sensors return empty data." The Admiral's middle eye narrowed. "Show me." The main screen lit up with the sensor display. There was the ship clear as day on the basic sensors. But all the detailed scans that should show what it was made of, how it was powered, what weapons it carried, all of those came back blank. "Have you tried emergency frequencies?" the Admiral asked. "Yes, sir. All of them." No response. Admiral Korthval studied the screen for a long moment. In all his years, through all the wars and conquests, nothing had ever challenged Caltharian sensor technology. Their quantum scanners could see through any stealth system, could read the thoughts of enemy commanders through brainwave analysis. "Sir," another technician called out, "the ship's course will bring it directly to our station. At current speed, it will arrive in 6 hours. The Admiral made his decision. "Send a message to Imperial High Command. Priority 1. Tell them we have an unknown contact that our sensors cannot identify. Request immediate backup." He turned to his communications officer. "Send the standard warning to the approaching vessel. Tell them they are entering Caltharian space without permission. They must identify themselves or be destroyed." The message went out on all frequencies in 12 different languages. The response was silence. "Sir," Zexhai said quietly, "what if our sensors are broken?" "Test them," the Admiral ordered. Within minutes, they had scanned 3 nearby asteroids, 2 patrol ships, and a cargo freighter. Every scan worked perfectly, giving detailed readings down to the smallest component. "The sensors are fine," Zexhai reported. "It's just this ship that won't scan." Admiral Korthoval felt something he hadn't experienced in decades: uncertainty. The Caltharian Empire was built on the certainty of their superior technology. They could outfight, outthink, and outtech any enemy. But how do you fight something you can't see properly? "Launch Squadron 7, he ordered. "Full intercept pattern. If this ship won't identify itself, we'll board it and find out what it is the hard way." The hangar bays of the border station opened, and 5 sleek destroyers launched into space. Each ship carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Squadron leader Veltar commanded the group, and he had never met an enemy he couldn't defeat. As the squadron moved to intercept, the Admiral watched the unknown ship on his screen. It didn't change course. It didn't speed up or slow down. It just kept coming like it had every right to be there. "Sir," the communications officer said, "we're getting reports from other border stations. 3 more unknown ships have been detected entering our space at different points. All of them show the same sensor readings or lack of readings." The Admiral's blood went cold. 1 ship might be a scout or a lost vessel. 4 ships meant something organized, something planned. "Are they all heading for our stations?" "Yes, sir. Each one is on a direct course for the nearest Caltharian facility. Admiral Korthval had commanded fleets in the great wars that built the Empire. He had seen rebellions crushed and new worlds brought under Caltharian rule. But this felt different. This felt like the galaxy was about to change in ways he couldn't understand. "Double the alert status," he ordered. "All weapon systems online. All shields at maximum power. And get me a direct line to the Emperor. He needs to know about this." On the screen, the mysterious ship continued its approach. It moved with a grace that seemed impossible for something so large. There was something about the way it flew that reminded the Admiral of the old stories his grandmother used to tell. Tales of ships that sailed between stars like birds flying through air. But those were just stories. Legends from before the Empire, when the galaxy was wild and full of mysteries. "Sir," Zexai called out, his voice tight with worry. "Squadron 7 reports they will intercept in 30 minutes. "But sir, the ship is beautiful." "What do you mean?" "I mean it's not just big and unknown. It's beautiful. Look at the visual feed." The main screen switched to a direct camera view of the approaching vessel. The Admiral's breath caught in his throat. The ship was indeed beautiful in a way that Caltharian ships, built for war and conquest, never were. It flowed like water frozen in the shape of a ship. Its hull seemed to shift and shimmer, like it was made of liquid metal that had decided to hold a particular form. "That's not any technology I know," the Admiral said quietly. As they watched, the ship did something impossible. For just a moment, it seemed to be in two places at once. The sensors showed it in one position, but the cameras showed it slightly ahead of where it should be. "Did you see that?" Zexai whispered. "I saw it," the Admiral replied. "I just don't believe it." The ship settled back into normal space, continuing its steady approach as if nothing had happened. Admiral Korthval realized that everything he thought he knew about the galaxy might be wrong. The Caltharian Empire had always believed they were the peak of evolution, the ultimate development of intelligent life. But what if they were wrong? What if something else was out there? Something so advanced that Caltharian technology couldn't even properly detect it. The thought was terrifying and exciting at the same time. "Time to intercept?" he asked. 28 minutes, sir. Then we'll have our answers soon enough." But deep down, Admiral Korthval suspected that the answers would only lead to more questions. And some of those questions might be too big for the Caltharian Empire to handle. Squadron leader Veltar had destroyed rebel fleets and conquered 3 worlds for the Caltharian Empire. He feared nothing that flew in space. But as his 5 destroyers closed in on the unknown ship, something felt wrong. The ship was massive, easily the size of an Imperial dreadnought. But it moved like a dancer, smooth and graceful in ways that big ships shouldn't be able to move. Its hull seemed to shift colors as he watched, flowing from silver to blue to something that wasn't quite any color at all. "All ships maintain formation," Veltar ordered through his comm system. "Weapons ready, but do not target until my command." His sensor officer, Lieutenant Kexval, looked up from her screen with confusion. "Sir, I'm still getting no readings from the target. It's like our scanners are looking right through it." "That's impossible." "Yes, sir, it's impossible. But it's happening anyway." Veltar had been in space combat for 15 years. He knew every trick, every stealth technology, every way to hide a ship. This was none of those things. This was something new. "Distance?" he asked. 50,000 kilometers and closing, sir." At this distance, his weapons could turn the unknown ship into burning metal in seconds. But something held him back. Maybe it was the way the ship moved, like it was dancing through space. Maybe it was the complete lack of fear it showed, approaching 5 warships like they were just scenery. "Unknown vessel," Veltar broadcast on all frequencies. "You are in violation of Caltharian space. Identify yourself immediately or we will open fire." For a moment, there was only the static of empty space. Then a voice came through the comm system, speaking perfect Caltharian, but the accent was strange, like someone who had learned the language from very old books. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran vessel UES Defiance," the voice said. It was female, calm, and completely unafraid. "We come seeking diplomatic contact with the Caltharian Empire. We request safe passage to your nearest command facility." Veltar blinked all 3 of his eyes. Terran was not in any database he knew. And this Sarah Chen spoke like she didn't understand that she was facing the most powerful military force in the galaxy. "Unknown vessel," he replied. "You will power down your engines and prepare to be boarded for inspection. Any resistance will be met with destruction." There was a pause. Then the woman's voice came back, still calm, still polite. "Negative, squadron leader. We appreciate the escort offer, but we'll follow you to a diplomatic facility." Our vessel remains sovereign territory. Veltar felt his anger rising. No one refused Caltharian authority. No one had refused in over 200 years. You seem to misunderstand your situation, he said, his voice hard. You are one ship facing 5. You will comply or be destroyed. We understand our situation perfectly, Captain Chen replied. Do you understand yours? The arrogance was breathtaking. Veltar had heard conquered species beg for mercy. He had heard them threaten and bluster before they died. But he had never heard this calm certainty, like the human knew something he didn't. All ships power weapons, he ordered. Target the unknown vessel. His 5 destroyers charged their plasma cannons and armed their quantum torpedoes. Enough firepower to crack a small moon focused on the mysterious ship. The targeting computers locked onto the vessel. Red lights appeared on every weapon display showing solid target acquisition. Then something impossible happened. The ship was still there. Veltar could see it with his own eyes. But the weapon lock slipped away like trying to grab smoke. The computers showed the ship in one place, but the targeting systems couldn't hold on to it. What's happening? He demanded. Sir, his weapons officer reported. We have visual confirmation of the target, but our targeting computers can't maintain a lock. It's like the ship is there and not there at the same time. Veltar stared at his tactical display. The ship showed up on sensors as a solid object, but every time his weapons tried to lock onto it, the target seemed to slip into some space between spaces. This is impossible, he muttered. Captain Chen's voice came through the comm again. Squadron leader, we're detecting weapon charges. We take this as a sign of nervousness rather than hostility. Would it help if we demonstrated that we mean no harm? Before Veltar could respond, his ship lurched slightly. Not from an impact or explosion, but like space itself had hiccuped. For just a moment he felt like he was falling, even though he was securely strapped into his command chair. Report, he shouted. Sir, his navigator called out, we just moved. About 1,000 kilometers, but we didn't fire engines. We didn't do anything. Space just moved us. Veltar looked at his tactical display. His entire squadron had been gently shifted to new positions, like pieces on a game board moved by an invisible hand. They were still in formation, still facing the human ship, but they were simply somewhere else than they had been a moment before. Did you feel that, squadron leader? Captain Chen asked. We apologize if the demonstration was unsettling. We wanted to show that we have capabilities you might not expect. Veltar's mouth was dry. In 15 years of space combat, he had seen plasma cannons that could boil oceans and torpedoes that could shatter asteroids. But he had never seen anything that could move other ships without touching them. What are you? He whispered. We're explorers, Captain Chen replied. We've been away from this part of space for a long time. We're curious about how things have developed in our absence. Away? How long? Oh, about 3,000 years, give or take a century. Veltar felt the universe tilt around him. 3,000 years was before the Caltharian Empire, before recorded history. That's impossible, he said. Nothing lives that long. We don't live that long as individuals, Captain Chen said with what sounded like amusement. But our civilization does. We've been exploring the far reaches of the galaxy, while you've been building your empire here. Our empire rules this entire sector, Veltar said, trying to regain some authority. We have fleets that can destroy star systems. We're sure you do, Captain Chen replied kindly. And very impressive they must be. But squadron leader, we don't destroy star systems. We improve them. On his tactical display, Veltar watched as his weapon systems slowly powered down by themselves, not damaged or forced offline, just gently encouraged to sleep. We've disabled nothing permanently, Captain Chen assured him. Your weapons will work perfectly once we've passed, but we thought it might make this conversation more comfortable for everyone. Veltar realized he was facing something completely outside his experience. The humans weren't using superior firepower or better armor. They were using principles of physics that his civilization didn't understand. What do you want, he asked. Diplomatic contact with your leadership, Captain Chen said. We'd like to understand how this region has developed, and we'd like to discuss some changes that may be necessary. Changes? We've been observing your empire's expansion methods, she said, and now there was a hint of steel in her polite voice. Some of your practices concern us. We think there might be better ways to organize galactic civilization. Veltar felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature in his ship. The humans weren't just technologically superior. They were judging the Caltharian Empire and finding it lacking. "Follow us to the border station," he said quietly. "Admiral Korthoval will want to speak with you." "Thank you, Squadron Leader. We appreciate your courtesy." As the human ship fell into formation with his squadron, Veltar couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy had just changed forever. The Caltharian Empire had always been the biggest fish in the pond. But it seemed the pond was much larger than they had ever imagined, and much stranger fish were swimming in it. Admiral Korthval watched through the command center's main window as the human ship approached his border station. Even seeing it with his own eyes, he could barely believe it was real. The ship moved like liquid flowing through space. Its hull caught and reflected the light of nearby stars in ways that metal shouldn't be able to do. And it was completely silent. No engine signatures, no energy emissions that his sensors could detect. "Sir," Commander Zexai reported, "Squadron 7 has returned to dock. Squadron Leader Veltar requests immediate debriefing." "Send him up," the Admiral replied, never taking his eyes off the human vessel. When Veltar entered the command center, his face was pale and his hands were shaking slightly. The Admiral had known him for 10 years. Veltar was one of his best officers, brave and steady in combat. Seeing him rattled was almost as disturbing as the mysterious ship itself. "Report," the Admiral ordered. "Sir, they have technology we don't understand," Veltar said quietly. "They moved my entire squadron without touching us. They disabled our weapons without damaging anything. And sir, they're old. Very old." "What do you mean old?" "They claim their civilization has been exploring space for over 3,000 years. Before our empire. Before our recorded history." Admiral Korthval felt something cold settle in his stomach. The Caltharian Empire prided itself on being the peak of galactic evolution. The idea that something older and more advanced existed was almost unthinkable. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "the human ship is requesting permission to take position 3,000 kilometers from the station. They're asking for a diplomatic meeting." The Admiral looked at the massive border station around him. Its walls were made of the strongest metals known to science. Its shields could stop the combined firepower of 20 dreadnoughts. Its weapons could crack moons. But somehow he didn't think any of that would matter if the humans decided to be hostile. "Grant permission," he said, "but maintain full alert status." The human ship glided to the requested position and stopped, hanging in space like a work of art. It made no aggressive moves, powered no visible weapons, made no demands. "Open a channel," the Admiral ordered. The main screen lit up with the image of a human female. She looked young, though Veltar had said these people were very old. Her skin was dark, her hair was black, and her eyes held a depth that reminded the Admiral of looking into deep space. "Admiral Korthval," she said, somehow knowing his name without being told. "I'm Captain Sarah Chen. Thank you for agreeing to speak with us." "You're in violation of Caltharian space," the Admiral said, trying to maintain authority. "Explain your presence here." Captain Chen smiled, and it wasn't mocking or cruel. It was the kind of smile a teacher might give to a student asking a good question. "We're here because we've been watching your empire's expansion," she said. "Some of your methods concern us. We thought it was time for a conversation." "Our methods have brought peace and order to dozens of worlds," the Admiral replied stiffly. "Peace through conquest is not true peace," Captain Chen said gently. "It's just delayed rebellion. We've seen this pattern many times before." The Admiral felt his anger rising. No one questioned Caltharian methods. No one criticized the Empire. "Our empire has stood for 3 centuries, he said. "We have the strongest military in known space. Perhaps you should see what you're challenging before making threats." "We're not making threats, Admiral, but if you'd like a demonstration of capabilities, we're happy to oblige." The Admiral made a decision that he would regret for the rest of his life. "Target the asteroid cluster in Sector 7, he ordered his weapons officer. "Full power demonstration." The border station's massive plasma batteries turned toward a group of asteroids floating a safe distance away. These were weapons that could reduce a city to vapor in seconds. The Admiral wanted to show these humans what real power looked like. "Fire," he commanded. Streams of superheated plasma lanced out from the station, striking the largest asteroid. The rock, bigger than most buildings, simply ceased to exist. It became a cloud of glowing gas that quickly dispersed into space. "Impressive energy output," Captain Chen said, and she sounded genuinely interested. "Your plasma matrix configurations are quite efficient. We've been curious about your approach to directed energy weapons. The Admiral felt a moment of pride. At least the humans could recognize superior technology when they saw it. In return, Captain Chen continued, may we demonstrate our own capabilities? Before the Admiral could respond, space near the asteroid field began to change. It was subtle at first, like looking at water through heat shimmer, but then the change spread and the Admiral realized he was watching something impossible. The glowing gas cloud from the destroyed asteroid was moving, not drifting randomly as gas should, but flowing in patterns. Currents of vapor began to spiral and dance, forming shapes in the vacuum of space. What are you doing? The Admiral whispered. Showing you another approach to matter manipulation, Captain Chen replied. The gas continued to move and shape itself. Slowly, impossibly, it began to solidify. The superheated vapor that should have dispersed across space was instead gathering itself together, cooling, forming solid matter again. But it wasn't reforming into the original asteroid. Instead, it was becoming something new. The matter flowed and shaped itself into a perfect geometric sculpture, a crystal lattice structure that caught and refracted the light of nearby stars into rainbow patterns. The sculpture was beautiful, hanging in space where the asteroid had been moments before. But more than beautiful, it was impossible. The Admiral was watching matter obey commands that had nothing to do with physics as he understood it. How? He managed to ask. We've learned that matter is much more cooperative than most species assume, Captain Chen said. Instead of forcing it to do what we want, we ask it nicely. The sculpture held its form for 30 seconds, spinning slowly and casting rainbow light across the hull of the border station. Then, as gently as it had formed, it began to dissolve back into gas and drift away naturally. We've found that displays of creation often communicate intent more clearly than displays of destruction, Captain Chen said. Though we appreciate the demonstration of your defensive capabilities. Admiral Korthval stared at the empty space where the sculpture had been. In his 60 years of life, he had seen the rise of the Caltharian Empire. He had watched worlds surrender in the face of superior firepower. He had believed that military might was the ultimate form of power. But what he had just witnessed wasn't military power. It was something beyond anything he had imagined possible. What are you? He asked, his voice barely audible. We're what your species could become, given time and different choices, Captain Chen replied. We're what every species in this galaxy could become, if they learned to work with the universe instead of trying to dominate it. The Admiral felt the foundation of his worldview cracking. The Caltharian Empire was built on the idea that strength came from conquest, that power came from the ability to destroy your enemies. These humans had just shown him that there were forms of power that made his greatest weapons look like primitive tools. What do you want from us? He asked. We want to talk, Captain Chen said. We want to understand how your empire developed, and we want to discuss whether there might be better ways to organize galactic civilization. And if we refuse? Captain Chen's expression grew sad. Admiral, we've seen this pattern play out across the galaxy many times. Empires that build themselves on conquest eventually collapse from their own weight. We're offering to help you evolve beyond that pattern before the collapse happens. Our empire is strong, the Admiral said, but even to his own ears it sounded hollow. Strength isn't just about weapons, Admiral. True strength comes from understanding, from cooperation, from building something that lasts because people want it to last, not because they're forced to accept it. The Admiral looked around his command center, at the officers who had served the Empire faithfully for decades. They were all staring at the screen, listening to this human woman casually discuss the reconstruction of everything they had known. You're talking about the end of our empire, he said. We're talking about the beginning of something better, Captain Chen replied. The question is whether you'll be part of building it, or whether you'll cling to the old ways until they crumble around you. Admiral Korthval realized that his choice wasn't really whether to fight these humans. His technology couldn't even properly detect them, let alone harm them. His choice was whether to learn from them or be left behind by them. For the first time in his military career, retreat seemed like the wisest option. Emergency sessions were being held across the Caltharian Empire. From the smallest military outposts to the grand halls of the Imperial Palace, the same impossible recordings were being watched over and over again. Emperor Draxmore sat in his private chamber, viewing the tactical footage from Admiral Korthval's border station for the 20th time. As the absolute ruler of the most powerful empire in known space, he had seen many strange things. But this defied everything he thought he knew about reality. "Play it again," he commanded his aide. Once more, he watched the human ship approach the border station. Once more he saw matter reshape itself into impossible sculptures. And once more he felt the cold certainty that his empire was facing something it was not equipped to handle. "Summon the Intelligence Council," he ordered. "I want everything we know about these Terrans within the hour." The Intelligence Council was the Empire's most secretive organization. They knew things that were forbidden to ordinary citizens, maintained records that went back to the Empire's founding. If anyone could explain these humans, it would be them. Chief Intelligence Officer Mextara arrived within minutes, carrying a sealed data case that looked older than the Empire itself. Her face was grim as she activated the secure hologram projector. "Your Majesty," she said, "we've found references to these humans in our deepest archives. The records are disturbing." "Show me." The hologram activated, displaying text in an ancient form of Caltharian that even the Emperor could barely read. But the translation scrolled alongside, and with each line, Draxmore felt his understanding of the galaxy shift. "These are fragments recovered from conquered worlds," Mextara explained. "Legends and myths that were nearly lost. We always assumed they were just stories told by primitive species. The record spoke of a people who walked between stars, without ships, and spoke to matter as if it were alive. They described beings who could reshape worlds with their thoughts and travel through folded space like stepping through doorways. According to these fragments," Mextara continued, "the humans were active in this region over 3,000 years ago. They seem to have had contact with dozens of species before our empire existed. Then why haven't we encountered them before?" the Emperor demanded. "Because they left, Your Majesty. All the records agree on this point. About 3,000 years ago, the humans simply departed. They told the species they had contacted that they were going to explore the deeper reaches of space." The Emperor studied the ancient text. "These sound like fairy tales. Species don't just disappear for 3,000 years and then return. With respect, Your Majesty, we thought matter couldn't reshape itself on command either. But we have video evidence of exactly that happening." More records appeared on the hologram. Stories from dozens of different worlds, all telling variations of the same tale. The humans had been teachers, explorers, healers. They had helped primitive species develop technology and philosophy. They had ended wars not through conquest but through understanding. And then, without warning, they had announced they were leaving to explore beyond the known galaxy. "The last record we have," Mextara said, "is from a species called the Yalani. They were contacted by humans just before the departure. The human ambassador told them they would return someday, when the galaxy was ready for what they had learned." Emperor Draxmore felt a chill. "Ready for what?" "The records don't say, Your Majesty. But given what we've just witnessed." Before she could finish, an aide burst into the chamber without permission, a crime normally punishable by death. But the aide's face was so pale with terror that the Emperor held back his anger. "Your Majesty," the aide gasped, "we're receiving reports from our deep space reconnaissance fleets, the ones sent to trace the humans' point of origin. What have they found?" "Stars, Your Majesty." "But not normal stars." The Emperor activated his personal communication system, connecting directly to Admiral Yorthak, commander of the reconnaissance fleet. "Report," the Emperor commanded. Admiral Yorthak's voice came through the comm, filled with wonder and fear. "Your Majesty, we've traced the human ship's trajectory back to its source. What we found is, I don't have words for it. Try. The stars here burn in colors that shouldn't exist. We have planets orbiting their suns in perfect mathematical patterns that violate everything we know about orbital mechanics. And Your Majesty, the space itself is different. Our instruments can't properly measure distance here. A light year in this region seems to be both a light year and something else entirely." The Emperor's blood ran cold. "Explain." "It's like they've edited reality, Your Majesty. Changed the basic rules that govern how matter and energy behave. We found what appears to be a star system where the planets are connected by bridges of solid light. Another system where the planets share the same orbital path but somehow never collide." The implications hit the Emperor like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just developed advanced technology. They had transcended the need for technology as other species understood it. They had learned to reshape the fundamental forces of the universe. Sir, Admiral Yorthak continued, we're detecting hundreds of these modified star systems. The humans haven't been hiding somewhere in the galaxy. They've been transforming entire regions of space into something beyond our comprehension. Emperor Draxmore ended the communication and sat in silence for several minutes. Around him, his advisors waited nervously for his response. Finally, he spoke. How many species serve our empire? 47 directly controlled worlds, Your Majesty, Mextara replied. Another dozen client species. And how did they come to serve us? Through conquest, Your Majesty. We demonstrated our superior military might, and they submitted rather than be destroyed. The Emperor nodded slowly. And now we face a species that can reshape matter with their thoughts. Tell me, Chief Intelligence Officer, what would you do if you were one of our subject species and learned that such beings existed? Mextara's face went pale as she understood the implication. They would petition the humans for protection. Exactly. Our empire is held together by fear of our military power. But if our subject species believe the humans are more powerful than us, he didn't need to finish the thought. Every person in the room understood. The Caltharian Empire wasn't just facing a diplomatic challenge or even a military threat. They were facing the complete dissolution of everything they had built. Your Majesty, an aide called out. We're receiving a transmission from Captain Chen. She says she would like to schedule a formal diplomatic meeting. The Emperor almost laughed at the absurdity of it. Here was a being who could apparently reshape reality itself, politely requesting a meeting as if she were a minor diplomat from a client world. Tell her, he said slowly, that the Emperor of the Caltharian Empire will be honored to meet with her. As his aide hurried away to send the message, Emperor Draxmore contemplated the end of his world. Not the physical destruction of planets or the death of his people, but something perhaps more profound. The end of the age when the Caltharian Empire was the most powerful force in the galaxy. The humans were back after 3,000 years of exploring the deepest mysteries of the universe. They had returned with knowledge and power that made his greatest achievements look like a child's toys. The only question now was whether the Caltharian Empire would adapt to this new reality or be swept aside by it. Looking at the ancient records scattered around his chamber, at the stories of species who had welcomed human guidance 3 millennia ago, the Emperor began to suspect he already knew the answer. The age of empire was ending. The age of something unimaginably greater was about to begin. And for the first time in his long reign, Emperor Draxmore wasn't sure if that was a tragedy or a miracle. 6 months had passed since first contact with the humans, and the galaxy had become a very different place. Emperor Draxmore stood in his throne room, looking out through the great window at the capital city below. The streets were quieter than they had been in decades, not because of fear or oppression, but because many of his people were no longer there. They hadn't fled. They hadn't been conquered. They had simply chosen differently. Your Majesty, his aide announced, Ambassador Telvar from the Zelani worlds requests an audience. The Emperor sighed. He knew what this would be about. The Zelani had been a client species of the Empire for over a century, providing rare minerals in exchange for military protection. But that was before the humans had arrived. Send him in. Ambassador Telvar entered the throne room with none of the nervous deference that Caltharian subjects usually showed their emperor. Instead, he walked with the confidence of someone who had options. Your Majesty, Telvar said, offering only the minimum bow required by protocol, I bring a message from the Zelani Council. Speak. We are formally withdrawing from the Caltharian Protection Treaty. We no longer require your military services. The Emperor had been expecting this, but it still stung. And who will protect your worlds from raiders and rival species? Telvar smiled, and it wasn't a cruel smile. It was the expression of someone who had discovered that the universe was bigger and more wonderful than they had ever imagined. We have been accepted into the Terran Cooperative, he said. Captain Chen personally oversaw the installation of their defensive systems on our homeworld last week. What kind of defensive systems? The kind that make attack impossible, Your Majesty. Not through force, but through... I lack the words. The humans have taught our scientists how to create fields that turn aggressive energy into harmless light. Any weapon fired at our world simply becomes a beautiful display in our sky. The Emperor felt another piece of his empire crumble away. The humans weren't conquering his subject species. They were making conquest itself obsolete. Is there anything else? He asked wearily. Yes, Your Majesty. Captain Chen asked me to extend an invitation. The Terran Cooperative is holding a Galactic Council next month to discuss the formation of a new governmental structure. All species are welcome to participate. After the ambassador left, the Emperor sat alone in his throne room and contemplated the end of everything he had known. This was the 7th species to withdraw from the Empire this month, not through rebellion or war, but through the simple realization that they no longer needed Caltharian protection. Why fear plasma cannons when the humans could teach you to turn them into fireworks? Why serve an empire built on force when you could join a cooperative built on mutual aid? Your Majesty. His chief military advisor, General Kexnor, entered without being announced. We need to discuss the military situation. What situation? The Emperor asked bitterly. Half our subject species have left. The other half are sending representatives to this human council. What's left to discuss? The humans, Your Majesty. We still don't understand their capabilities. We need to determine if they can be fought. The Emperor almost laughed. General, they reshape matter with their thoughts. They travel through folded space. They've turned regions of the galaxy into impossible geometries that our science can't even measure properly. What exactly do you propose to fight them with? We have the largest fleet in known space, the general said stubbornly. Surely there must be some way. General, the Emperor interrupted. Yesterday a human ambassador appeared in our intelligence headquarters. Not transported by ship, not beamed down by some device. She simply stepped out of empty air, delivered a message, and disappeared again. Our best scientists can't even explain how she existed in our reality, let alone how to stop her. The general's face went pale. What was the message? An invitation. The humans want to meet with me personally. It could be a trap, Your Majesty. A trap? The Emperor shook his head. General, if the humans wanted to harm us, do you really think they would need to resort to tricks? They could probably unmake our entire star system by thinking about it wrong. That evening, the Emperor received another visitor. But this one didn't arrive through the palace doors or even through a window. She simply materialized in his private study, sitting calmly in the chair across from his desk as if she had been there all along. Captain Sarah Chen looked exactly as she had in the holographic communications. Young, despite her species' apparent age, with dark skin and eyes that held depths like looking into space itself. Your Majesty, she said politely, thank you for agreeing to see me. I don't recall agreeing to anything, the Emperor replied, though he found himself surprisingly unafraid. There was something about her presence that was calming rather than threatening. You didn't say no when your aide mentioned the invitation, Chen said with a small smile. We took that as encouragement. The Emperor studied her carefully. You're here to demand my surrender. I'm here to offer you a choice, she corrected, though I understand the distinction might seem academic from your perspective. What choice? Captain Chen leaned forward slightly. Your empire was built on the assumption that might makes right, that the strong should rule the weak. It's not an uncommon pattern. We've seen it develop hundreds of times across the galaxy. And you disapprove. We understand it, she said kindly. It's a natural stage in the development of most civilizations. The problem is that it's also a dead end. Empires built on force eventually collapse under their own weight. Our empire has stood for 3 centuries. Which is impressive, Chen agreed. But Your Majesty, 3 centuries is barely a moment in galactic time. We've watched civilizations rise and fall across thousands of years. The pattern is always the same. Conquest, expansion, rebellion, collapse. The Emperor felt a familiar anger rising. And you're here to accelerate that collapse. We're here to offer an alternative, Chen said gently. Your species doesn't have to follow the same destructive path. You can choose to evolve beyond it. Into what? Into something better. Something that builds rather than conquers. Something that lasts because people want it to last, not because they're forced to accept it. The Emperor stood and walked to his window, looking out at his capital city. You're asking me to give up everything my people have built. I'm asking you to transform it into something your descendants will be proud of, Chen replied. Your Majesty, we've been watching your empire for some time. Your people are capable of greatness, But that greatness is being wasted on maintaining control over others. And if I refuse? Captain Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then you'll become irrelevant, she said finally. Not through any action on our part, but through the simple choice of others. Your subject species have already begun to leave. Your neighbors have stopped fearing you because they know we exist. Within a generation, maybe two, your empire will be nothing but a few isolated worlds clinging to past glory. The Emperor turned back to face her. What are you offering? Partnership. Membership in a galactic community where every species contributes according to their abilities and receives according to their needs. Where conflicts are resolved through understanding rather than force. Where the energy you've spent on conquest can be redirected toward exploration, creation, improvement. You're describing paradise. I'm describing possibility, Chen corrected. It won't be perfect, nothing ever is. But it will be better than what you have now. And it will be something your people can be proud to pass on to their children. The Emperor sat back down, feeling every one of his years. How? Start by releasing your subject species voluntarily. Make it clear that any world that wants to leave the Empire is free to do so. Then begin the process of transforming from an empire into a republic. Let your people choose their own leaders. That will mean the end of the monarchy. It will mean the end of absolute power, Chen agreed. But Your Majesty, absolute power is a burden as much as a privilege. Wouldn't you rather be remembered as the Emperor who chose to lift that burden from his people, rather than the one who clung to it until it destroyed them? The Emperor was quiet for several minutes, considering her words. Outside his window, the city went about its daily business, unaware that their ruler was contemplating the end of their entire way of life. If I agree, he said finally, what happens to me? You become the first president of the Caltharian Republic, Chen said with a smile. Elected by your people because they trust you to lead them into this new age. Instead of ruling through fear, you lead through respect. And if they don't elect me, then you step aside gracefully and let someone else guide them. Either way, you become the leader who was wise enough to see that the future required change. Captain Chen stood, and the Emperor realized their conversation was ending. I need time to think, he said. Of course. But Your Majesty, don't take too long. The galaxy is changing with or without you. The question is whether you'll be part of shaping that change or be left behind by it. She smiled one last time and then she was gone, as if she had never been there at all. Emperor Draxmore sat alone in his study, contemplating the end of his empire and the beginning of something unimaginably different. Outside his window, the stars shone with their ancient light, the same stars that had watched the rise and fall of countless civilizations. But tonight, they seemed to shine a little brighter, as if they too were eager to see what new wonders the galaxy might hold. The Age of Empires was ending. The Age of Cooperation was about to begin, and for the first time in his long reign, the Emperor found himself looking forward to the future.